Sharif Bey wanted to be a contemporary ceramic artist since he was 15. And this is him, 35 years later. Kind of powerful to think about, wow, when I made that, I had, hair down to my ankles. When I made this, it was shortly after our daughter was born, or this is when we were in grad school before we got married. A significant percentage of this work was made when I pretty much couldn't leave the house or fire, outside of my basement studio. So working back from the pandemic to the Black Lives Matter protests and going all the way back to the Rodney King riots, there's a pretty significant amount of national moments in our history. What is important to note about Facets is that it's a journey where I started working in a material and working on the wheel, and then subsequently being exposed to all these different trajectories, of people working in clay, and ultimately me kind of finding a voice through voices. I describe myself as a sculptor who's embracing his identity as a potter and looking at the history and repertoire of functional pots to predicate my sculptural works on. So I'll have ceremonial, quote unquote, figurative objects that are predicated on vases or covered jars or cookie jars or amphoric vessels or bottles, and then sometimes even teapots. So the idea of me using that literally and then moving to using that conceptually and metaphorically, the idea of a vessel or the idea of function is one of the central themes of this exhibition. To talk about the necklace sculptures, originally the pieces were made in proximity to the body, made to subdue the body. Really, I really wanted them to have presence on the body. And the earliest pieces I would kind of decorate my 10-year-old daughter with, and they'd look heavy and they'd have presence. And then the later pieces started to transcend the body, and then some of them now, exceed 11 feet. And the idea of taking something that is about, intimacy, a beaded necklace, and then taking that from, the intimate to the monumental. The Protest Shields series started, originally I was, making something kind of mask-like. I thought of them as shields. And that surface space gave me an opportunity to kind of harken back to some of the pottery surface resolutions. So the Protest Shield has a lot of sgraffito, and what it also does is it integrates a lot of the other kinds of tendencies of some of my other work. So combining, metal and clay, combining two different clays, these kind of porcelain radial thorns that go around it. And I just started to think about it as an object of protection. And I started thinking about riot police and things like that. And symbolically, I thought about these, black fists that were significant to the kind of Black power iconography. So I wanted to integrate those into the radial of the piece. So there's this presence, there's this crown. So the piece in some ways, references Benin imagery, but then it also integrates a lot of the pottery vocabulary, but also kind of the quintessential Sharif Bey nails and porcelain thorns as well. In seeing this work come together, it is really, it's kind of like a homecoming that can take place at any place, and it happens to be, where I reside, which makes it that much more special because I'm fortunate to be able to show a piece of myself to people in Syracuse. When you look at more than 30 years of work, this is not a journey that I took by myself. So the part of it that makes it sentimental, and my wife came here and she and I have been married for 22 years, she was with me for most of that journey. And the thing that it evokes for me is people, places, programs. It's a survey, of objects that is pretty inclusive of my journey from a teenager to an artist with some measure of visibility.